Our next session is on the topic Simplify Scale with SD-WAN. SD-WAN has several advantages when compared to MPLS or traditional lease lines. In fact, experts believe that SD-WAN is the future of connectivity in India and across the globe. Let me invite Bejoy Thekkekara, Director Sales, Data Center and Networking Business, India Region, Dell Technologies, to share his knowledge about this topic.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Bejoy Thekkekara, and I'm responsible for the networking business in Dell. Today, I'm going to spend the next 15 to 20 minutes specifically around SD-WAN and what's Dell's play specifically in this technology area. I've spent over 2 decades in the industry, and I'm sure there are many of you folks on this in the audience who have kind of spent an equal amount of time, if not more. One thing that has remained constant in the last 2 decades is the network infrastructure. Think about it. We're possibly running the 21st century applications on 20th century networks. I will take the next 15 to 20 minutes specifically around these 4 tracks in terms of what is the industry landscape, what are the current challenges that customers like you do face, why is there so much of excitement, why is SD-WAN so disruptive, and why is it so imperative to meet the business demands. Specifically, a sneak preview in terms of what does Dell offer from an SD-WAN perspective, and last but not the least is why Dell in the SD-WAN area. Now, this slide really typically gives a pictorial depiction of what are or what have been the traditional legacy wide area networks. Clearly, the building blocks to this design were really built around a large data center, possibly a disaster recovery site, and then you obviously had regional and remote offices clearly built onto it. All of these legacy networks were really built on MPLS as the prime technology, VSAT, and some of the legacy technologies. Clearly very expensive in terms of the way they were architected, and the entire philosophy was very different, right? The networks of today are really built, and as more and more applications go onto the cloud, you can clearly see that the network has shifted to where the people are, right? And where the data is clearly needed, right? So today's network really has all very different blocks to the puzzle, right? In terms of it has a private WAN, it has a public internet, then you have a large mobile workforce, and think of a scenario which is reality today, which is the pandemic around us. The people are at homes, right? So clearly, the networks of today really need to be aligned to where the people are, and hence the relevance of SD-WAN, right? So what are the current challenges that customers like you are facing? And clearly, there are 4 to 5 that we have possibly cited out here. There is a inconsistent application access or a performance issues and an expensive backhauling, which are very inherent with the legacy wide area networks, right? Adding on to the complexities are some of the WAN architectures and the multiple routing protocols that are there, right? The real estate in itself, which means the real estate of routers, firewalls, WAN optimizing engines, the multiple operating systems makes it very cumbersome for the IT and the operations team to manage some of these wide area networks. Automation in itself is a big challenge. Automation is a big deterrent for legacy networks when it comes to time to market, get onto new branches, and so on and so forth. So automation clearly is one area which is an area of improvement specifically from a wide area network perspective. And last but not the least is the cost, right? Costs around infrastructure, support, connectivity, delays, and all of that, right? So these are some of the issues which customers like you are really facing specifically around the legacy networks. Now, what is software-defined networks? At a very conceptual level, it really means how do you kind of virtualize your wide area network, right? It's clearly meant for any customer or any potential customer who's really trying to consolidate an existing network or really build a network which is onto multiple branches, so on and so forth, right? And there are 4 solid pillars that makes the concepts of SD-WAN and the architecture experience, right? One is the simplicity, right? The SD-WAN in itself gives customers today high amount of visibility and a lot of dynamic control and ability to make changes on the fly. So clearly WAN simplicity and WAN visibility is something which is very inherent and which is very, I would say, a big strength of the wide network concept, right? Then the other thing is really about assured application performance, which means when you run critical workloads, whether it is on unreliable internet connections or otherwise, how does the SD-WAN architecture use intelligence to make sure that from an end user perspective, you're able to get the assured application performance? Then is the ability to work in a very heterogeneous environment, which is the need of the hour today, right? You have private clouds, you have public clouds, and you have the edge, right? And consumers and the workforce is really sitting on the edge. So how do you really make sure that you are able to work on this heterogeneous environment and give a consistent experience is a SD-WAN experience. And as they say, the devil lies in the details, right? Clearly, there are huge number of cost savings that one can really attribute to if you kind of build on an ROI or a business case of SD-WAN, versus the legacy networks, and the savings are almost up to the tune of 50 to 75%, right? Some more stats and some more, I would say, use case scenarios to build onto why SD-WAN, and a lot of the analysts are actually predicting that come 2021, which is not too far away, SD-WAN will really take a dominant share in terms of its relevance, importance in the marketplace. And so much to say that, it's almost close to the tune of 70%. And clearly the legacy router market is clearly a waning market, right? So who are, or what are possible scenarios, I may want to say, of customers like you who should look at SD-WAN as an option, right? Clearly, as more and more customers look at cloud-based applications and where you are looking at a consistent and a much more assurance in terms of applications level, clearly that's a business case for SD-WAN, right? A lot of customers who are now trying to test more and more applications of the cloud first before they kind of deploy it, those are potential use cases and business scenarios wherein those customers should definitely look for SD-WAN deployment. Many customers are looking at also upgrading their existing branch routers and the edge infrastructure, so to say. Again, extremely important that they look at SD-WAN, for building some of the next generation wide area networks. If you are a greenfield customer, right, and if you are building it grounds up, clearly SD-WAN is a no-brainer. It's kind of the way to go on, right? And something that we are experiencing day to day in our customer engagement, specifically in India geography, is the WAN contract renewals, right? A lot of legacy networks that are there. A lot of large enterprise customers are looking at renewing the existing AMC contracts for routers, right? And these are customers which should ideally look, right? And the flexibility that SD-WAN gives you is that you can actually start off with a pilot brownfield phase or expansion of SD-WAN, parallelly possibly work on both the legacy and the SD-WAN architecture, and then fully migrate onto it, right? These are some more, I would say, statistics or numbers. Obviously, the numbers are kind of captured in this slide in dollars, but we can work on specific use cases, very focused on a specific enterprise customer or otherwise, in terms of what are the savings. But I think the highlight of this message is really that if you were to look at even at a hybrid approach of SD-WAN and MPLS, it's almost close to about 50% savings that you go. And if you really go SD-WAN the full hog way, which is what the right hand side of the slide depicts, you can actually get on to almost 75% of reduction of WAN cost. It's just like a big saving in itself, right? Now, what's the Dell EMC offering specifically on SD-WAN? So we have two distinct platforms intended for two distinct architectures, or I would say route to markets from a Dell technologies perspective. As you probably all are aware, we have VeloCloud, which is part of VMware, which is also a Dell Technologies company. So we have the SD-WAN Edge 600 series and the Edge 3000 series, which are primarily intended to run on VeloCloud-based solutions. Both of these devices, so we have the head end and we also have the branch end devices. And the Dell Edge 600 and the 3000 series are pre-installed with VeloCloud. Subscription can be kind of purchased separately. Obviously, there are multiple flavors to the subscription. You have the premium, enterprise, and standard. So that's something which clearly runs on Dell bare metal appliances, and they're pretty much I would say factory fitted with the VeloCloud. Then we have what we call as the VPs platform, intended for customers who are looking at options like Versa and so on and so forth, right? So we have the 1400 series and the 4600 series, clearly built to drive the SD-WAN solutions, specifically if they're looking at options like them as well, right? Both of these platforms, and I think this is a big one in terms of the evolution and also in terms of the robustness and also the partnership that we have, is that both these platforms are built on Intel. So significant synergy between Dell, between Intel to get the best of the breed, right, on both the platforms, right? Whether it's the SD-WAN Edge appliance or whether it's the virtual edge platforms that we have, right? Now, one of the biggest testimonials to SD-WAN is the very fact that large telcos in India and globally are really talking of giving SD-WAN as a managed services. So specifically for that market, we have something which is called as a universal CP. So what is a universal CP? So on the left-hand side, you have the traditional networks, and I'm sure customers out here will kind of resonate with the same. You might potentially have a WAN optimization thing like Riverbed, and OS like Sonos, a firewall like SonicWall, and possibly a routing device, right? And clearly, these were this was how the networks were built erstwhile. What we're really trying to do is trying to get all of these devices and architectures that are pretty much required for the branch onto one single device, which is a universal CP, right? Which is primarily a Dell hardware platform that we have built, clearly, which can run some of these VNFs, in a virtual environment, right? And with the common management and support, and most importantly, zero-touch provisioning, few truck roles, and self-activation devices. So this is a device purpose-built for the telcos to offer managed services. So this is a slide which just peels the onions and goes into a little more details in terms of what's there in a universal CP. So clearly it's the Dell infrastructure hardware that we have in the form of the device in itself, which can run any hypervisor, whether it's ADWA, whether it's VMware or KVM. So that's really the layer on top of the hardware device. And then we have the images of any of the SD-WAN security, routing, WAN acceleration, DPIs or file media that you intend of your choice, right? This really speaks volumes about the VNFs that are ported onto the Dell platform in the universal CP. So clearly there are all kinds of I would say platforms, and within the platforms, whether it's routing, whether it's for DPI, whether it's for encryption, whether it's for firewalls, we clearly have ported our device with almost who's who for from a technology perspective, right? So clearly today is the time for SD-WAN, and most importantly, onto what and why. I would just want to summarize as to why does Dell have so much of relevance, and why is it a partner of choice that you would like to kind of look at as an option, right? So our solid footprint on the data center, compute and storage, and also on the consumer side in terms of laptops, clearly makes us a vendor with a lot of credibility and a powerful brand to back you up, right? VeloCloud is part of VMware, which is now, again, a Dell Technologies company, right? All of these SD-WAN deployments or all of these SD-WAN devices are covered under the Dell support, warranty, and the technical assistance center, follow the sun model, 24/7, backed by a nationwide logistics for India, right? I mean, to an extent, I don't know how many of you are aware, but Dell supports almost 55,000 pin codes in the country. So it's a very, very, I would say, strong credential of technical support, warranty, and logistics, and nationwide support that Dell kind of brings onto the table, right? Dell has always stood for what we believe are very strong pillars of ease of doing business. And we are one of the forerunners around it. So you have options to select. You can obviously look at the Dell Direct customer models that some of you probably have, and or you kind of look at alternatives or partner ecosystem models as well. And last but not the least is a point very pertinent to the market situations around. So we've announced a lot of innovative financial models backed by our in-house Dell Financial Services, specifically for the India market. So clearly, these are some of the reasons which we believe that Dell becomes a very strong partner of choice for you, specifically around the SD-WAN marketplace. That's it from my side for the moment. Please do stay safe and do enjoy the rest of the virtual session. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bejoy, for the insightful content. With this, we'll move on to the next session. Let's take a short break. Till then, stay tuned.